When you're working in the city, and particularly when you're working on brownstones in the city, it can be very challenging because for simple things like parking, it can be challenging. It can also be not very efficient. Whereas when you're working in the suburbs, if you pull into somebody's driveway, it doesn't matter if it snows. You can stay in the driveway. No one's going to tow your car out or your truck out of the driveway. Also, getting materials in and out of a building that's 4 stories tall can be challenging. When we were doing the roofing, we had to actually crane in all of the materials that were going up on the roof, including the decking and the roofing materials. We also have to crane in or use a boom truck to get the blue board in for the plastering, and cabinetry. Things like that is very difficult, and in a narrow building with a narrow staircase, it can also be very challenging as you wind up the stairs trying to bring cabinets up to the upper floors. So there's all kinds of challenges when you're working in the city in these brownstones that you don't face when you're working in the suburbs. When we're working on a brownstone, that, with all its challenges, it offers a unique opportunity for us to take a really old building, and in this case a building that had been abandoned and had been a multi-family building, and really turn it into a beautiful single-family home. And I think we did a great job of that. We want the building to be true to itself in the end. We don't want to take a building with all the history that this particular building had and create some new remodeled home that has nothing, doesn't keep anything of the old and doesn't look anything like what the original building was. And I think in this case we were able to do that along with the architect and the homeowners who were really great to work with and really knew what they wanted. The brownstone was abandoned for probably 5 or 6 years, maybe longer. And our job, the project, was to go in and renovate it and convert it to a single-family home. It had been a multi-family home before then. One of the major challenges of the project, though, was that we were also digging down to create an extra story down below for a kid's family room. And that took quite a while to get approvals to do, and then also to actually get the work done. You start with some shovels and you get a bunch of guys into the basement and you start shoveling, digging down. It took a lot of there was concrete down there. There was some very old compacted soil that had to be broken up with a jackhammer. It couldn't be hand dug. And then as you see in the video, we put in a conveyor belt to get all the dirt out of the building. And it's a painstaking, very slow process. But what we got out of it was we got an actual full height ceiling for an extra level in the brownstone, which converted it from a 4-story to a full 5-story building. This particular brownstone had shown signs of settlement from years of neglect. And one of the things that we had to do before we started construction was to stabilize the exterior wall. So we had to, by hand, take the brick off on the ground level and stabilize the building and then put the brick back in. We couldn't jack up the building because it would have thrown everything off from 100 years of settlement. We exposed all of the framing. We put new beams in. We put steel in and bolted the steel to party walls. And once we got all that done, then we could get going on the renovations. Well, the first thing you do in a project like this is you have to get the demolition done. You have to expose the bones of the building, because these old brownstones in the city, they've settled over the years and there could be rot in them, there could be insect damage. So you really need to expose the framing so that you know what you're dealing with. And once we did expose the framing, we were able to see that a lot of it had rotted away. So that all had to be, not only did the building have to be stabilized, but the framing had to be redone and the floors somewhat leveled. It's difficult to level a building like this when the whole building itself has shifted. And one of the things the owners wanted to do with this building was to maintain and restore the original staircase. And that staircase had settled over the years. So again, we couldn't jack it up. We had to stabilize it along with the rest of the building. So once we got all that done, we got the framing done and we exposed the brick and we stabilized the outside of the building, then we were able to start on the renovations and putting everything back together the way the owners wanted it to be done. This particular project is in the south end of Boston, and South End, like other areas of the city, have their own architectural historical commission. So anything that you do to a building in this district has to be approved by this architectural commission, historic commission, for anything that you can see from the street. So that has to do with the brick on the outside, the windows, any exterior doors, and also a deck. In this particular project, we actually put a roof deck. There was already one there, but we put a new roof deck up there. And anything you do cannot be seen from the street. If it is, it has to be approved by the Historical Commission. The interesting thing is that in the back of the building, which is on an alley, none of that fell under the Historic Commission because that's not a public street. So we could pretty much do what we wanted. So in the back, we used Pella windows that were clad in aluminum. They're black, so they tend to go with the architecture. And the architect on this project did a great job of speccing out what type of windows, what the shapes were, what they were going to look like. In the front of the building, we were under the restriction of the Historical Commission, so we couldn't use Pella because the Historical Commission required wood windows, like the windows that were on the building originally. So we had to have those made up to fit the openings. The owners did ask us to create like a little parking area in the back of the building. We created a separate mudroom entrance, and then right next to it we put down some cobblestone, so they have their parking space, instead of just being mud, now is all cobblestone. As a company, we use probably 90% of our projects use Icynene. It's a spray-in open cell foam, although they do make a closed cell foam as well. The benefit of that is that it seals up any kind of drafts that might be in the wall, as opposed to the old fiberglass, which, if you've seen fiberglass in walls, it can tend to settle a little bit. It's not tight around electrical outlets, and you get drafts. With Icynene, the Icynene fills up all of the cavities and makes it virtually just about airtight. So there were some interesting details in this project that we wanted to make sure that we either duplicated or tried to put back in the building that really made sense. The owners were very good about paying attention to little details like that, and in the end, it made a huge difference. We love remodeling. We love going into old, dilapidated buildings and homes that really need upgrades, and helping the owners make a difference and kind of creating their vision, or making their vision a reality.